Axe versus the shield.
We got ads on Twitch. What is this all about?
Say goodbye to the one-size-fits-all family limited flight story.
Good there. I'm good here. All right, I think we're live, guys. It is 12:01. Hello, all fellow division agents, and welcome to this. This is our second roundtable discussion. Today's topic is the Hunter. Before we get into that, let me introduce myself for all of you who may not know. I'm Weezer. Background, I was instantly hooked on the division back during the closed beta. It was really unlike any game I'd ever played, and I consumed as much of it as I could. Not long after starting the division, I was honored to become a moderator for the division channel and named to the ETF, or Elite Task Force Bravo. I kind of came up with this idea of streaming the division and the game discussion in general so that it would give gamers the opportunity to express their thoughts, their concerns, and their opinions in a live setting. And that's exactly what we're doing here today. I think it's a cool idea, and I hope you guys really enjoy it. So to get this started, let me introduce my co-host. I started playing games with this guy earlier this year and instantly connected with him. We've been on that division grind for a while. He's tried his best to carry me through PUBG to no avail. I still have no chicken dinners. And I carried him through some NHL as well. He's much better at NHL than I am at PUBG. But I've enjoyed every minute of it. One of the creators and founding members of Sherpa Gaming. Welcome, MajorPain. Major, how you doing?
Hey, not too bad, thanks, Weezer. Just hanging out here today, man. Getting ready to have a really good conversation with these guys.
Are you ready to do another roundtable?
Absolutely ready to do another roundtable. We've been looking forward to this one for a long time.
Awesome.
So before we get into this, I just want to say a special thank you to the division for supporting this discussion and all the people out there who helped spread the word, get the information out, and everybody who's joining us today for this conversation. We couldn't have made it happen without the support and encouragement of all those involved. And just to let everybody know, monitoring our chat today is Sapper87. He's another founding member of the Sherpa Gaming team, and he's done a fantastic job of keeping the Discord in line, helping us promote a positive gaming community. And in other news, he's getting married in 5 weeks, so he's taking one of his last solo Saturdays to join us here. This goofy talk. How you doing today, Sapper?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. I'm excited. Let's do this.
That's good to hear. You ready for this?
I am. Not really, but yeah, let's do it.
So why don't you let everybody know where they can find and follow you out there?
You can find me on Twitter, Sapper_87. I did have some commands in here, but of course it wouldn't be a live stream without something breaking. But Sapper_87. You can also find me on Twitch, same thing. But mostly you can find me living in the dungeons of the Sherpa Discord.
That's a good place to be.
Doing an awesome job.
It's fun.
Well.
It's an extremely fun place to be. A lot of awesome people. Real quick, I am going to deviate slightly. Agent Morgan Creed is also helping me, guys. Mod the channel. You're also going to see Yoda's bathtub. We'll be taking your guys' questions and stuff. So make sure you're paying attention to mods. If you have questions, get your questions over to us. We will get them over to the team.
Excellent. So, the Hunters. Everybody loves the Hunters. They love to hate the Hunters. They run into them, but they love the experience they bring, right? I mean, that's pretty concurrent. Well, back on podcast number 19, Drew Reschner was asked about the Hunter. And he said his inspiration and motivation for the Hunters was a sneaky ninja. And many of us have found these wonderful, complex AI opponents to ruin a healthy survival run more than once. They've ruined some underground runs for a lot of us. They've been the bane of our existence in some legendary missions. But what we don't really know is their origins, their tactics, their chain of command, what their end game goal is. And we've all been left in the dark on that. Nobody's really ever commented on it. But that hasn't stopped the theory from flowing in this community. And that's what we're here to talk about today.
Yeah.
So I think we're gonna have a lot of fun with that. And we've got two of the people here spearheading that theory that's gonna take a really deep dive for us. Our first guest is recently named Ubisoft star player representing the Division community at PAX West next month. You've probably seen him wrecking the competition with his trusty D3 build, or read one of his build guides, or maybe you've seen him slamming down some old school WWF GIFs on Twitter. Lieutenant BuzzLightBeer, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for the invite.
Absolutely glad to have you here. Why don't you tell everybody where they can find and
Find and follow me. Let's see. You can find me over on YouTube at Lieutenant BuzzLightBeer, and of course on Twitter at Lieutenant BuzzLightBeer.
Excellent,
Huh.
excellent.
Got the monopoly on that gamer tag.
Works out good. I think Weezer wishes he had the same, but
Yeah.
And our second guest really needs no introduction. You've probably seen him terrorizing shade agents in Survival at E3, PAX West. He's a 2018 star player at E3, and he's a driving force behind Survival Saturday, where you can find him immediately following this stream. His cosplay is second to none, and his theory on the Hunters is what drove us to this particular round table. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome the Hunter, also known as SplinterShield. How you doing today, bud?
Well, hello, agents. Glad to be here.
That's not terrifying enough for me to go ahead and close this out.
That's the stream.
Yeah, by the way, Hunter, you killed me in epic fashion yesterday on my survival stream. It was not cool. Not cool.
It was fun.
Hashtag sorry, not sorry.
That's okay. So why don't you let everybody know where they can find and follow you there, Splinter?
Best place to find me is on Twitter. SplinterShield, but missing an E in Splinter because the other SplinterShield was already taken.
Okay.
And I stream, usually about twice a week at SplinterShield on Twitch.
Excellent. Good to hear. But I think people have heard us talk enough, right? I think they know why they're here. So let's just get right into it. Splinter, everybody wants to know, who are the Hunters?
All right. Well, as I was crafting my Hunter cosplay over, it was about 5 months of pretty constant work before I debuted it. I was asking myself that question, like, who are these Hunters? And the Survival DLC came out, about a month or two into that work period. And so, I'm playing the game and I'm seeing the Hunters. And initially my thoughts were just, these guys are probably first wave rogue agents. They're allied with Keener, and, they're jumping us at the end of the survival run because, hey, we've got these antivirals, and they don't want us to have these antivirals because Keener is going to unleash the virus again, and he doesn't want anybody to have the cure or something. That was my initial thoughts. That's kind of where I started. But the more I thought about it, the more I was just really unsatisfied with that. Going like, they don't look like first wave rogue agents.
Mm-hmm.
Like I could see them making them look like first wave rogue agents, but like beefier, like they had more armor or something. But there's just something about the whole Hunter look where I'm like, these guys are not first wave rogue agents. But there's clues. There are some clues in the game. We see that they move like us. They do the combat rolls.
Right.
We see that they have shade tech. They are using the same shade tech that we have.
Mm-hmm.
And you might even argue that, as you go through the DZ and survival, you keep hearing these little bursts of distortion on your comms.
Mm-hmm.
You could even argue like, well, that's because they're using some kind of shade frequency that's near to ours and it's kind of bleeding over a little bit or something. You might even argue like that's a little bit of a clue. But the other clue is like every place where you drop down into the DZ in survival, you will find these agent corpses that have like bled out. I mean, you find these agent corpses all over the DZ in survival actually. And so you can see like, there's not cleaners and LMB and Riker's bodies killed in the same way. It's all agents.
Right.
And so it's like, okay, well, whoever the hunters are, they are hunting agents, clearly. They move like us. They have shade tech. They have to be related. I figured they have to be related to us in some way. And what happened was, for a while, I was just kind of unsatisfied with that initial explanation. I just kept thinking those things like, well, what else could they be? And what actually happened was I was going through the New York Collapse book again. And for those of you out there who love the game and kind of want some more lore and more story stuff, I highly, highly recommend the New York Collapse book, because there's all kinds of cool little nuggets to find in there. But there's several messages in the New York Collapse book that are like coded. You have to kind of like find them and decode them. One of those messages was, there are divisions within the division. And I remember just kind of thinking to myself one time, like, what do they mean by that? Like, at the time, I just read it and I was like, oh, that's cool. But then I kind of started really thinking about, like, well, what could that actually mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I still remember, like, the day, like, I had this brainstorm where I just kind of sitting there. It was a lazy weekend, like Sunday or something, and just kind of going like, oh, wait a minute. What if the division they're talking about is like the hunters are part of some compartmentalized section of the division, and their purpose is to take out rogue agents? Because the simultaneous thought I had was, whoever set up Directive 51. Oh, by the way, there's a commercial playing on the stream right now on that video. I don't know if you meant for that to happen.
No.
I just had a real derp moment. I reached up and I actually put my mouse on skip ad.
Yep.
Same.
On the
Me
stream.
too. That's why I'm taking it off right now. Thank you.
Anyways, so as I'm sitting there thinking about it, I was like, whoever signed Directive 51 had to have had kind of that same moment that we have in the Dark Knight movie, where they're talking about, like, hey, in times of crisis, the Romans would elect someone emergency powers, and they would deal with the crisis. Then afterwards, they'd give up those powers and go back to normal life. And it's seen as this term of service, blah, blah, blah. And then she's like, well, yeah, but the last guy to do that was named Caesar, and he never gave up his power.
Right.
If they're going to have this Directive 51 and give these people these sort of emergency carte blanche powers, someone somewhere along the line would have had to have had the thought, like, well, what are we going to do? How are we going to deal with this if and when some of these guys are going to go rogue? That thought had to have come up somewhere. And I was like, that's what the hunters are. That's why they're trained like us. That's why they have the shade tech. It was a very exciting thought, because at that point, I don't think anybody else had this thought yet. And I was like, oh, it started blowing my mind. And I was like, well, wait. Could this really be true? Like, do we have... I don't know. I just started kind of digging into this. And I was like, well, what else? Are there any other clues? Is there anything else out there that might support this besides just they move like us and the shade tech thing, and the fact that they are hunting agents? We see that they've got the watches on their attack vests. They're taking those as trophies, chopping off the agent's hands so they can take the watches real quick. And they are like murdering these agents. Absolutely. I mean, we see some scenes of brutality in the light zone and the dark zone. They're out there, but I mean, like, in survival, like, you see these agents just bled out, and you're like, oh, this was not a quick, clean death. Like, this was slow.
Yeah.
And yeah. So I started thinking about other things that we see in the game that are unresolved. And one of those things is when we go into the dark zone through the airlocks, the checkpoints, we hear Fei Lao talking about, like, hey, there's these supply drops happening in the dark zone. But you can tell, like, she's kind of bothered and dubious about these supply drops in the dark zone. Like, she's asking somebody higher up, like, what's going on? And they're saying, oh, it's to continue the fight against Keener. But you can tell, like, she's unsatisfied with the explanation.
Mm-hmm.
because I mean, think about it. If the supply drops are for the agents, why are they not dropping at the hub or the boo or somewhere, a more safer kind of under control area? Why are we dropping these things in the dark zone? And again, I kind of had this thought like, wait a minute. What if these supply drops are actually for the hunters? And we just never see them because if agents show up, they just pull back. It's like, nope, we don't have a tactical advantage here. We're just pulling back. Definitely. And I was like, like that could kind of help. It's a reasonable explanation for another mystery in the game, is basically my point.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think, as you said, we see them, they seem to ambush us. They never kind of full on attack us. And
right. They wait for that tactical advantage before they strike. Right. I agree with that.
What about you, Buzz? What do you think?
I agree with a lot of what Splinter just said, but the hunters, like I saw some theories about this, they're not androids. They're not cyborgs or anything like that. There's real flesh and blood under there. And I do think they were developed by the same, let's say, training facilities, SHD, that trained us as agents. They move like us. Their tech is like us. If you think about it, you can't use DZ PvP as an example, but like when we're taking on very high level elites on, let's say, legendary mode and everything, we can consistently need to take cover to avoid incoming fire. The hunters really were the first NPCs. If you remember before that, NPCs never used to take cover. And I remember, I think back in 1.4, there was no blind fire from NPCs. They would shoot at you, they would rush, and then they would hide. And I remember I also listened to that podcast with Drew, and he said the hunters were actually the way that they developed the blind fire for the NPCs. So they have the techniques. They have the techniques that we have, but as a whole, the hunters are one generation better than us as agents. Their armor is better. Their movement speed, even though they're designed to move like an agent, they move faster than us. So their agility is there. They certainly have the strength. We've seen that from their ability to, I use the ballistic shield, rip the ballistic shield off with that axe. The savagery they can wield that axe with. They're also very well trained at waiting for the proper moments. If you notice, they're not like the who are they? The cleaners, shotgunners just running up the street, hip firing. The hunters know exactly what they're doing, and many times, I don't want to jump into underground because we're talking about survival, but many times when you're focus firing one, the other one is already circling around behind you and is already attacking from your most vulnerable point, which is the rear. So their techniques, their armor, everything, it's one step better than us. When they come in with a smoke bomb, the disrupt, how long that disrupt lasts is considerably more than anything that any of our grenades or our sticky bombs can do. They have that EMP blast, which is definitely strong and takes everything offline. And as a whole, even though we've all developed strategies, like I like to go across next to Cal Keys and shoot them from across the street, as a whole, they just don't pop up and just present a large target. So they're very tactical about what they do. I did attempt to use the ballistic shield versus a hunter extraction the other day, and I will tell you that is not a good idea. So that ended very quickly. But for me, the hunters are the cleanup crew for the end game. And you have to read a lot into, and I went back, I don't have the collapse of New York, but what I do have is consistent access to all of the different echoes, the phone logs, the field guides, and everything like that. And I think they were developed in tandem with some sort of health organization, possibly a pharmaceutical corporation, and I want to take another step further. I think they were almost genetically enhanced or genetically screened to take on this role, which we can, which we talk about, the fact that they don't seem to have any virus filter yet. They can survive in open air in the dark zone with no issues at all. They certainly have.
I just want to add on that note real quick, as a guy who's worn that hunter mask, yeah, there's no way that they've shoehorned some kind of virus filter in there. They do not have a filter.
So for me, the hunters are the protectors of the end game. They only and even though everything's been perverted now, everyone wants hunters in the light zone. We have hunters now at the end of several of the legendary missions. Hunters were added into the underground, which is still kind of plausible. But hunters originally only showed up when we attempted to extract our antivirals. So they are the protectors of essentially what is the cure to the dollar flu.
Well, I think we kind of all talked about that. I mean, we said that everybody wanted the hunters, so it was kind of maybe like a difficulty modifier, legendary missions. But the underground does kind of fit because we had that discussion where the underground would be a viable mode of transportation for them to move stealthy.
To move stealthily, unseen throughout the city.
Correct. And I believe that's how they were originally inserted into New York, is under the cover of darkness through the use of the tunnels. They certainly weren't just airdropped in. Everyone would have noticed that. But they are there to protect the cure, is what they are. They're there to protect the secret. They're there to protect the results of the field test of the green poison, which we can get into later. And they are the protectors of that cure, which ultimately just boils down to they are the police force for this power grab. That's who they are.
Well, I think that kind of answers a few of the things we were going to talk about. You know, we briefly touches on where did they come from, but I think more so now, who controls the hunters? Who do they answer to? Who's pulling their strings?
Splinter, you're up.
All right, I'll take that. Well, to be honest, we have I would say we have really no knowledge on that at this point. With the hunter theory, with my theory, I would say, you know, whoever's controlling the division is also controlling the hunter. I think that the hunters were originally intended to be a force to reckon with any rogue agents, but at this point, and especially after Keener has done what he's done, I think that the orders come down to just eliminate all agents, that all agents are a threat. If one agent can go off like Keener and become like a worldwide threat, or world-class threat like Keener, then I would not be surprised if somebody higher up is like, oh, okay, agents, we're just going to go with a clean slate at this point. Just take them all out.
Things are very bad.
Yeah, something to that effect. And just to backtrack just for a second, I would like to just chime in on the, you know, how hunters are on legendaries and in resistance. You know, I don't personally see legendary missions or resistance as part of the story or lore of the game, because that's a lot of people have asked me about that. They're like, well, what about the hunters and that? I'm like, it's not really part of the story, but you know, they're just fun to have there because, you know, in resistance you'll also Barrett and Joe Farrow and all these guys coming back,
right?
That we have killed before. So anyhow, I just so as far as like who's controlling the hunters, my theory is that it's whoever's controlling the division. If anyone's still controlling the division, we have Hunterception here. We have like Hunter cosplay inside the Hunter mask.
Yeah, I'm throwing up a few of your cosplay pictures. Keep going, guys. You're doing awesome.
Cool. Oh, thank you. All right, so anyway, that's what I think about who's controlling the hunters. I'll shoot it back to Buzz.
Yeah.
Let's see. Although it's unknown, we don't have actually any evidence of it. Going back to my theory that they are the policemen for the cure, I think there was some sort of deal struck between some sort of, sorry, I'm going to use the term splinter cell of the division, some sort of black ops covert, or possibly even this pharmaceutical corporation who I think it's Vexix, located in New York. I think they assisted with the original training and the augmentations, possibly, small augmentations of the hunters. Okay, and they certainly have a lot to gain from the green poison. And so I think it's this embedded splinter cell of SHD along with the pharmaceutical corporation Vexix. I think they're calling the shots, and they use the hunters as basically an enforcing crew. Okay, and I think ultimately, what's it, Dr. Amherst? I think he was assisted by Vexix. Okay, because if you start to think about it, the implementation and everything, it just seems like so much. The logistics of getting that much out into New York to cause that much widespread panic, it seems a lot for one person. You would need assistance. You would need guidance. Okay, so I think they already had the cure. Okay, I think they had the cure, and I think they had already applied it to the hunters. Okay, so that's why they are able to withstand everything that the Dark Zone can throw at them as far as the virus. And they used Amherst, they used the green poison as a field test. Okay, and then what they did is they also had the enforcers to protect that cure. Okay, so, and I believe that this first division game was also the hunters field test. Okay, because if you've got the ultimate biological weapon, the ability to replicate it, distribution, logistically, you've got that down, but you needed a proper field test. Oh my God, this thing's going across my screen. What better place to install it than on an island? That way you can keep it in a nice controlled environment. You can see how fast it spreads. What kind of panic does it create? What kind of just social unrest? The fact that every social structure breaks down, and then you insert the hunters in to protect the results of that, and also give them a field test. Because if you control the green poison, you also can replicate it. You can set it loose on another country, or something like that, and then all you would need is this small group of hunters who are impervious to it to go in and gain control. Okay, so I think the green poison was a field test, and Amherst was just the mule. He was kind of assisted along, and I think the hunters were designed to protect and enforce that field test, but also they were being tested as well to see if they could follow orders. They could, reduce the humanity out of their decision making, which clearly they do. I mean, they're the ultimate savages.
Right.
So
Yes.
I think that's what this is all about. They are being controlled by that splinter cell, along with, I think, that pharmaceutical company Vexix. Just there's something shady going on with them, which we can see in the echoes when I went back and I took a closer look at them.
I like it. It's interesting.
I'd like to chime in on a few things there.
Go for it.
I completely agree with you that I believe that the hunters have been given a cure, and that's why they have these masks but not virus filters. In fact, I have a little bit of a little theory that kind of goes along with that, because we know that they said the Dark Zone was set up as the quarantine zone, right? It all kind of started with how when the bodies started hitting the floor, they were they just had so many morgues were filling up, and they had to put these bodies somewhere, so they started dumping them into Central Park. And they're like, okay, we need to make sure that these are secured, so we don't have people going in and taking bodies or trying to see their dead relatives or something. We need to quarantine these bodies. So they started putting up a wall around Central Park, and I think that's how it started. And then it just kind of expanded. I think that it expanded, although they're numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, up to 9 going north. I think that it actually expanded south from Central Park, and that we've just numbered, those sections that way since it became the Dark Zone. Mm-hmm. But getting more to the hunter theory, I believe that they were taking all the bodies there to dump the bodies, and then they were also bringing the sick to the quarantine zone, and they were bringing in the best and brightest doctors and scientists to study the virus. And then we know what happened, or the story is that at some point, there's all this civil unrest going on. People are rioting, like protesting at the gates into the dark zone, or the quarantine zone at the time. And because they're taking people out of hospitals and their homes when they found out that they're sick, and taking them to the quarantine zone. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people are kind of up in arms about this. But I mean, the bottom line is that they're trying to separate. Well, theoretically, at least the story is they're trying to separate the virus from the healthy population. And there's all the civil unrest building, and then at some point, something jacks up the power grid, and orders come down. Okay, just everybody out. Everybody just get out of the quarantine zone. We're shutting it down. And they only had a few hours, which, I mean, that's really only enough time for them to probably make a few helicopter trips across the Hudson or something. Okay, because when they evacuate, I'm pretty sure that they were loading people up on choppers and taking them across the Hudson to get them out. Like, they weren't just going out into Manhattan. I think they were going out, like beyond the quarantine zone, beyond Manhattan Island. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, a few hours, really, that's enough time just to get the personnel out. They leave behind all the equipment and machine supplies. But the thought I had was, what if the real reason behind all this was that they did find a cure in survival, where we have found the experimental antivirals that were somehow left behind? Well, what if they found the cure, and behind the scenes somebody's like, they found the cure, but they found the cure a little too quickly for us to take full advantage of this crisis, or something along these lines. Mm-hmm. And so before the word really gets out that, like, hey, we found a cure, they send in an operative to jack up the power grid. And that's used as an impetus to create this order, like, okay, we're shutting everything down. So everyone thinks, like, oh, they were working on a cure, but before they could get the cure, they had to shut everything down. Mm-hmm. And so, the quarantine zone collapses, turns into the dark zone. And here's the other thing, like, anybody, think about this. If they wanted, there was a term that the Buzz was using, like, they are the cleanup crew for the end game. I feel like this is a perfect way to have an excuse. Like, anybody that they wanted taken out, that was in the quarantine zone, they could just be left behind. Operative comes in, kills them, and they say, they were killed in the confusion when the quarantine zone. When you create a moment of lots of chaos like that, anything can happen.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a good cover to eliminate people that are working, quote, for the cure. Just the chaos of the
but aren't necessarily aligned with their interest.
Right. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of, we've talked about this a little bit before, is we didn't see the hunters until survival. We don't see the hunters in survival until it's time to extract.
Correct.
Now, they attack us regardless of if we extract the antivirals or not. But they would really have no way of knowing if we have the antivirals or not. But they only attack us on extraction. So
no way of knowing? Well, don't you know that the moment you enter the dark zone in survival, the hunters are watching you?
Well, right.
No, I think so, but I don't.
But that's the thing. So they only attack us there's plenty of other times that we would have our bag to the hunters. They could pounce, but they only attack at the extraction. So to Buzz's theory, if they're working for Vexix, or a pharmaceutical company, or some splinter faction, why would they only be attacking us at the extraction? Like, what would be their motivation to just attack us with the antivirus?
Are you asking me?
Yes, sir.
My theory on that is, number one, at extraction, we are most distracted and most vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And possibly at our most confident.
Yes.
Yes,
because when you go to extraction, there's a lot that you have to take in. There's all of the, I guess, just the corpses left over. You're usually towards the end of your ability to use meds, so you're constantly having to check your antiviral meter, you know what I'm saying, your med meter, so that's constantly going off. And you're constantly having to watch the timer for the chopper and everything like that. That's a lot to take in. It could be almost like overload. What better time to actually jump in and take somebody on when they possibly are out of med kits? They're trying to manage popping either pain pills or the serum, which don't seem to be taking that much effect at that point.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you're worrying about a timer for a chopper coming in. There's a lot of cover usually at those extractions. It's the perfect opportunity to jump in. And the fact that when a hunter does arrive, the chopper can't even land. So they've got everything in their to their advantage. And what they do is they wait until you make a mistake. You get overconfident or you just get anxious. Okay, and that's when they attack. Okay, so when you're like, man, I got to get this thing on the chopper. I've got to get out of here. And you start running down there like you're going to face tank one of them. You get into that proximity where, everything gets triggered by them. They run right over, slash you. It's over. There's an hour and a half done. They win. They get your watch. They get the antivirals back. Game over.
Yep. Well, that works out. The chopper can't land when it can be EMP'd. That's kind of one of our struggles with it.
Well, I don't think the helicopter pilot wants to put the helicopter down when there's this creepy guy with a mask walking around down there with an axe.
And 13 watches glowing on his chest.
I'm not gonna mess with that.
But what about you, Splinter? Why do you think that's their key time to attack?
I do want to at least acknowledge that, being that this is a game, that there's a certain amount of like, we're talking about things, but there are some certain game realities that we should at least acknowledge here, and just hey, they're there to be kind of the finale for the survival experience, of course. But I think the hunter theory, I think that they already have the cure. But at the same time, I think that whoever is kind of issuing any orders to the hunters, if anyone at this point, that, I think that they've told them, like, under no circumstances are these guys to get a cure to the virus. I think that if there was something in the story that where Candle was getting close to a this is going out there kind of speculation, but I think that in the story, if there was something where Candle was getting close to a cure, that we might see the hunters like rush the boo and take out the medical wing or take out Candle or something, something along those lines. I think that I believe that there is some kind of conspiracy going on here where they want to keep the wraps on this cure, and something I forgot to mention before, but was thinking about when Buzz was talking, was Wild Max, another one of the star players that was at E3. And he and I have DM'd quite a bit because Max, his day job, he actually deals with contagious diseases.
Okay.
So he knows a lot about history of tests and things that have gone on, and he also thinks that this just in turn, like Buzz, you were talking about Amherst. I think like Vexix might have been helping Amherst in some way or fashion. Here's what I have to say about that. The New York collapse book, I think, is more than enough evidence to show like somebody knew something. Somebody knew something. Amherst, I mean, when we look in the game, it seems pretty clear that Amherst was working alone. They show a lot of things, and we see a lot of things like he set up this lab all by himself. There's never anybody else with him, but somebody knew something. Chernenko had worked with him, but Chernenko doesn't seem to like Chernenko in all the audio logs. We have Chernenko. He just seems like concerned about Amherst. He's like, I want to talk to my buddy. He doesn't seem to know that Amherst has done anything.
Correct.
So I don't think I don't think there's collaboration there, but I'm like, hey, somebody knew something and wrote this. For those in the audience who haven't read the New York Collapse book, it's kind of like 3 stories in one, because on the surface, it's this book where it's written as a survival guide, like an urban survival guide if a huge societal collapse occurs in New York. And then we have all these little notes from April Kelleher, who's her husband, who worked at a pharmaceutical company, gave her this New York Collapse book, and she had it with her when she ended up being trapped on Manhattan Island when the quarantine began. And so she starts writing all these notes about, it kind of becomes her diary, where she's writing all of these notes about her experience in this post-pandemic Manhattan. And then the third story is, as she's reading the book, she starts realizing there's these strange inconsistencies, and she realizes that there's codes in the book. They're not strange inconsistencies. There's these little messages that have been encoded in the book. And so she realizes that the guy who wrote this book knew something was going on, or something was going to happen. And so as you read the book, you see how she's uncovering this information. And so that's the thing. That's another reason why I thought, like, I think that a cure was discovered, and that somebody knew that this was coming. Sometime there was another series, Empire. It was something Orson Scott Card wrote years back. There were 2 books in the series. I can't remember. But he basically writes this thing where there's this conspiracy, but it's something where it wasn't the government that set it up, or it wasn't the government that did anything. The party that did the thing, what they did is they just kind of set up the opportunity for something to happen. They didn't actually do anything. They let somebody else pull the trigger, somebody else figure the thing out. And I'm kind of going, like, you look around, like right now, nowadays, we have CRISPR. Have you guys heard about CRISPR? It's this software you download where you can, take DNA and resequence it and things. And you can basically create, this is basically the technology that they're talking about when they take the virus DNA and they turn this, they just push all the sliders up to 10, I think is what he talks about it. So you have the different variables for the disease, and you can kind of take this CRISPR technology, take the DNA and resequence it and change the characteristics. And it's kind of like, maybe, I don't know if it was just somebody knew, like, okay, something like this is going to happen with the technology that's currently out there and the stuff you can get for cheap. Somebody's going to do this at some point. But here's what I would say to that idea. They're like, somebody maybe just knew something. This book coming out, the New York Collapse book, when you look at, as you go around New York, you can tell, like, this book just came out because, like, you find this book all over the place.
It's on Amherst's desk.
It's on Amherst desks, and you find it in other places too. You see it in the cinematic trailer that dropped in, what was that, 2014? I think it's 2014, where I'm not going to go into it. But anyways, you see this book all over the place. this book just came out right before this happened, and that's too much of a coincidence for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, okay, somebody knew something was going to happen soon. So I don't know if Amherst talked to somebody before. Like, that's the only thing I can think of, is that he must have said something to somebody, to this Warren Merchant guy that wrote the book.
Mm-hmm.
And Merchant's like, no, don't do this. And then he like disappeared off the map. And so he's like, well, if I go out there and say this is going to happen, everybody, you're crazy and lock me up, but maybe I can at least get the message out for some people who have their eyes open. And so he put the book out there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Yeah.
That's enough for somebody else talk for a minute now.
So that kind of plays to Buzz a little bit though too. Like if somebody knew it was coming with like a pharmaceutical company or Vexix or somebody, if you want to release it into a population center like New York City, be isolated, you have to have some variables in there. The opportunity to do this, to survive, to gather information, to kind of be those outlets, and that could also be what the hunters are there for too, is to monitor those actions. But we've got a lot going on here with the hunters so far. The speculation on who controls them, speculation on exactly what they want with the antivirals or what they don't want with the antiviral, why they hunt us at the extraction, but ultimately, why are they hunting us? What do you think they want to prevent us from doing?
Ooh, that's the good one right there.
Let's go, Buzz.
Okay. The hunters, like I said, they are the policemen. They are the gatekeepers. They are trying to prevent somebody else from publishing the cure. Because remember, this is all about a power grab. It's all about control. Whoever controls the green poison, the dollar flu, whatever you want to call it, could, in theory, control the world.
Right.
If a country doesn't want to pay a ransom fee, you just release this into their country, and they will instantly pay. And then you have your police force that can go in there and absolutely just go savage on the population, the remaining population, and the hunters. So they are protecting, and like I said, I keep saying Vexix. They are protecting Vexix and the Splinter Cell or whatever, and protecting their ability to control the world. That is essentially what they were doing, and at least that's the way that I kind of read it all. And if I can jump back real quickly to what Splinter was talking about too. You see, if you watch very closely, some of the virus field guides and things of that nature, and then if you listen to Aaron Keener talk about what he has learned about Chernenko and Amherst, and then if you watch actually a little bit of when Amherst is working, Vexix pops in a lot more than you think. Okay.
Like you see the logo on boxes or something.
Right.
Yeah.
When he's in his lab, there's Vexix boxes from ceiling to floor.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
And Keener learns that what Amherst was working on with Chernenko over in Siberia at the lab was turning smallpox into the genome, turning it into a digital reanimation of it. So he really wouldn't need it. He could use the 3D printer. But if you watch back and you watch Candle on those virus reports, she also tells you everything else that is actually attached to the smallpox virus. And they are H1N1, which is flu. I wrote these all down. Swine flu, Ebola, excuse me, Marburg, dengue, and hantavirus, which are all on the top 10 most deadliest viruses on the planet. Now, if he's got smallpox digitized, he still needs access to real versions of these viruses so he can attach them or he can map their digital DNA, which would fall back into Vexix. Because if you listen to Keener talks about, he's like, well, this seems to be based on smallpox, and he's like, there's only two places to get smallpox. There's the CDC, and then there's the lab that Chernenko worked at. And he says if either of these, or if it came from the CDC, he says I would have gotten word about it. Okay,
Yeah.
but these other things could have been provided.
And
by
we know that
Vexix.
Chernenko and Amherst met at the lab in
Mhm.
Siberia.
Right, they had quite a few discussions about it, and then also, and it may just be complete coincidence, but if you're on the
Vector. It's called the Vector Lab.
Yes, Vector Lab in Siberia. If you're on the west side of the map of Manhattan, and you start at Amherst Apartment, if you go due south, you know what you end up at in a few blocks? Vexix.
Mhm.
And then if you go due south a few blocks from there, you know where you end up? Amherst Lab. They're all in a direct north-south line, and I just started messing around with it because I went back to see the echoes, and I was like, all of these are pretty much straight up and down the same street. So he has his apartment, he has the lab in the middle, or excuse me, he has Vexix in the middle, and then he has the lab at the end, and he can just transport up and down, north-south, to those 3 different locations. Right, and then if you go back, if you also listen to, oh man, I forgot the name of her, the Vexix employee.
Oh yeah.
She
She's the one
had
that got killed in
echoes.
cars, right?
Judy Walters.
Yeah, Judy Walters. She had been contacted by Rick Velassi because he wanted to blow the story sky high that not only did Vexix have, I guess, medicines to address the side effects of it, they had medicines that could ultimately cure it. Okay, and Vexix was sitting on them in the name of greed and money. Okay, and Velassi was pushing Judy Walters to go public with it, and she keeps resisting him. He keeps calling her. Remember, he calls her once on the cell phone. He calls her once on the office phone. He's like, listen, you need to go, you need to go public with it. She's like, I'm going to go to the board meeting. I'm going to give them one last chance to do what's right. Okay. And then if you go and you actually interact with the different board members, okay, it actually says on them that they've all been extracted by a private firm. Yes. I don't know if they've all been taken out of this area by a private firm. I can't say if it's the LMB or not. I don't know. But there was the CEO of the corporation. He's talking about, he's like, well, I've heard they have a cure. He like probably like many CEOs, he doesn't know everything that's going on in his corporation. But then if you listen to the female just to his left, she talks about not only do we need to, she wants to take advantage of the fact that they're treating the symptoms. She wants to take care of her kids by also profiting from the cure. So that's where I think Vexix fits into this. It's just too much coincidence that it's in a straight line from Amherst to Vexix to his lab and back. Okay, and then Walters ends up running out. Remember, she runs out. She's struck by a car. Velassi is out on the street, and he picks up that thumb drive that has all of that information contained on it.
Yes.
And now we don't know what happened to that. Shortly thereafter, there's even phone conversations and information that nobody knows who Rick Velassi is. And as far as the
West Side
records,
Tears audio.
Yeah, as far as the phone logs and everything in the city, nobody can confirm this guy is even real. Nobody knows where he's broadcasting from. How is it that all of us just have ham radio, but this guy has ultra clear signal and can broadcast and be heard from everywhere? So there's
I'd like to chime in just a quick little note there. You'll notice in the hideouts in survival, you don't hear Rick Velassi on the radios. You hear garbled transmissions, but transmissions from others that you don't hear at any other time in the game. You only hear these people in the hideouts in survival. And I've thought about that a bunch of times. I haven't come to any conclusions yet, but I just wanted to inject that as you're talking about Rick Velassi.
Yeah,
That's very interesting.
And we don't know where Velassi is. We know that Keener from the West Side Pier conversations now has Chernenko. He has the 3D printing machine, and he has Amherst notes. But we don't know what happened to Velassi in reality. I mean, he could just be on a loop. Nobody's ever really seen him except for in the echoes. And we don't know what happened to that thumb drive, which I think not only
But it
can
begs the question: if he has that thumb drive, why haven't we heard a from him talking about it?
that's a good question. I think Keener's just going to reveal himself as he feels fit. I mean,
No. I'm talking about Velassi. Why haven't we heard Velassi talking about what's on this thumb drive?
Oh, I think Velassi's on a loop. I think Velassi's gone. I think he is dead somewhere, and his broadcast is being broadcast almost like propaganda to throw us off from the possibilities of finding the real truth of what happened.
Well, and I think Joker just made a comment too about the Wall Street peer recordings for Velassi. Like they kind of go dark on Velassi. It's like he's quiet now. Crazy. So I mean that does kind of play to that. What happened to this guy that is such a big part of every peaceful moment we do have in the game? His voice over the radio, and now all of a sudden he's just gone. And if he has that thumb drive that everybody wants, that isn't a stretch to think that maybe the hunters went after him.
Right. And if you remember, there is a phone log where somebody, I think that the title of them is Chasing Rick Velassi or something like that. There's a private citizen, a female, and she's like, who is this guy? She's chasing after him. And her final conversation is, she's like, I'm just warning whoever it is, if your guys are after Rick Velassi, don't chase after this guy. Okay? She says, I'm being followed, and all of a sudden it sounds like she either gets, hit over the head or her phone goes silent, and that's the final one. So she was digging into Rick Velassi. Somebody found out about it, and she was, I think, eliminated as well. So,
to be fair, she does sound like she's a little crazy.
Oh, yeah.
To be fair.
Who wouldn't be in this scenario?
So we don't know what happened there. But, yeah, I remember when those logs came out, a lot of us were like, wait, this is a whole new layer for us to think about now. Absolutely.
I like it. But that's what makes it interesting, though. This game leaves so many things to it. But we've got the Keener thing, we've got the Velassi thing, we've got the Hunters, obviously. There's so many things that could lead us into Division 2, but that's another topic for another day.
Oh, yeah.
But as we talk about the Hunters, then, we've already said, they're either a pharmaceutical company, maybe they're genetically screened or genetically enhanced to be virus. But what is their end goal then? So are they just a mop force, or are they going to do something to inspire change with results? Are they trying to maybe eliminate the second wave to make room for a fresh third wave and see maybe we're looking at a potential for the first wave didn't react the way they wanted, so maybe we're going to try a new response unit, so we're the second wave. Maybe that unit didn't work right, so we're going to mop those up, we're going to insert a fresh unit, a fresh third wave, and see if they respond the way. Like, what do you think the end goal of the...
I'll lead off, I guess.
Yeah, go ahead.
So with the Hunter theory, them being, sort of this secret compartment within the division, there's a few layers to consider here. My idea is that yes, there's somewhat. I think that Amherst was working alone, but that there were people that were interested in a crisis like this developing and who wanted to take advantage of this. And so when this happened, like I said before, where I think they found the cure, but whoever was pulling the strings was like, they found the cure a little faster than we would have liked, and so we're going to kind of prolong things. And so they whoever's pulling the strings is we're gonna make Manhattan this, they're gonna cut it off, and it's gonna be on its own now. We're gonna see what happens in there. And the Hunters were sent in to do what they would normally do, taking out rogue agents. And then the Velassi thing happened, and I think the Velassi thing happened caught whoever. Well, I think two things have happened. I think I do think the virus got out of control because we know that the virus has spread worldwide. It was not contained to New York.
Mm-hmm.
We know it's all over the place and has had a far. I think whoever, if there's corporate interests behind this, I think that they've been disappointed because they need people. They need enough people alive to be buying things from them.
Right.
So it doesn't. So I think that while there certainly were some corporate motivations that have been at play here. If they were behind, I don't know. I think that a lot of people were caught off guard by how far and the virus has spread and how virulent the effect has been. But I think the hunters have been sent in to kind of clean up. I think that they're now just. I do think that they are going after all agents. I think after the Keener thing caught the puppet masters by surprise, they're like, "Oh, whoa!" This suddenly got a lot darker than we were expecting. There's like, "Okay, we cannot. This is way too much of a fly in our ointment. This is," and they're just told the hunters to take out all agents. That's what I think. That's what I think their end goal is. They're tactically. They're not going to expose themselves. I think that they're. How can I put this? We know that the first. We don't have any numbers for how many there were in the first wave, how many there were in the second wave of shade agents, but we do know that even with the first wave, we hear them say consistently like there weren't enough in the first wave, and we heard them say in several places there were a lot more in the second wave. I think that I think that there's, when I think in terms of numbers, I don't think that there's tons of hunters out there. And I think that they're very careful about kind of husbanding their resources, managing their resources. And that's one of the reasons why they try to attack when they have a tactical advantage, because they're trying to preserve their numbers. Yeah, and that's what I have to say.
Nice.
What about you, Buzz?
Well, I think to understand what, and this is what their motives are, what their end goals are. Is that the original question?
Yeah. What's their end goal?
Yeah. Well, yeah. What is their end goal and their motive?
The end goal is, and it's kind of hard to differentiate. We don't know if the hunters were the precursors or the successors to the agents. If we go back and we watch all of these different sci-fi movies over the past and everything like that, do you come out in a laboratory? Do you come right out of the gate and make the gnarliest, most badass version of what you want to put out there, or do you start with small progressions? Small progressions. Do you start with a mild enhancement and go to a medium enhancement? And obviously, the hunters are the wild enhancement. They are I think the most savage versions of what agents are and what they could become. When you look at agents, and we know, or at least the way that I feel about it, listening back to Keener's audio logs, the very first one, he has some pretty strong ideals about saving people in the dark zone, and he's not allowed to do it. It's very clear that they were there, but they were basically sent into a no-win situation. They were not allowed to win. So it kind of,
he was like, if they had just given us a little,
you just needed a little more time, right?
Yeah.
And that is ultimately just seeing how bad it was allowed to become is what I think snapped Keener. And you can see it. He almost turns into like this multiple personality person, and he starts having conversations with himself after seeing the horrors of that. The first wave agents were sent in with an idea that they were just supposed to be there to kind of help contain, and as we talked about this field test, It's one thing to try out the green poison in the lab on a rats or something. It's another thing to try it out on the population, because you get to see what happens when, you know, the different social aspects of this, how quickly it spreads, you know, how strong the results, everything like that. First wave was sent in, they were never going to be allowed to succeed. Okay. Keener is not the only rogue agent. There's actually a phone, field logs or something like that from a female agent that went rogue. It doesn't say much about it. It says on the wild side or something like that is what it's labeled. She actually goes into the dark zone, and they send somebody after her, and she eliminates them. So the issue with the agents, and the hunters are basically agents, but the issue with the agents is through all their training, all of their mental training, their firearms training, their tactics, whatever they went through, they're still human. Okay, so they still have all that humanity, and that's what tends to betray them when they go into these situations. They become too attached, and you know, we were talking about this. Even Fei Lao broke from the training. You're not supposed to get too attached to your environment. You're not supposed to get too attached to your city. Obviously, she is.
Right,
okay,
yes.
so even she has broken from the core values of the training. Whereas the hunters, and I think the hunters were basically agents 2.0, all of that has been removed. There is no compassion. There's no, I don't think there's any ability to emote or empathize or sympathize. They are strictly there to take orders, no questions asked. And I think their end goal, the hunter's end goal, is actually goes back to who is controlling them. I think what this was is they were going to test the hunters out to see if they had all the same flaws and weaknesses that the original strain of agents had, you know, the first wave and second wave. And then they were going to use them as their police force, their enforcers, when they went out and they tried to blackmail other countries. Okay, because if you didn't want to pay the ransom fee, they could release just a very small portion of the green poison into whatever this region of the world that didn't want to pay. And then when everyone is sick, you put in the ultimate, you know, badasses. You send the hunters in. Okay, they've already been field tested. Okay, we know that they're impervious to the green poison. We know that they're excellent. It's scavenging and foraging for whatever ammo and whatever else they need, and all you got to do is occasionally drop in an airdrop to assist them. Other than that, they're completely self-sufficient, and they follow orders to the T. Okay, they could be there to enforce whatever these commands came down. They can also be there as a, what would you call them, a force to basically stand guard and to take over while, I guess, negotiations were done between whoever controls the green poison.
Security force.
Security force, right. I think that's what it was. And since first wave was basically a failure, second wave, we were basically brought in to figure out what the hell happened with the first wave. Now we have, which is, I think, is the third wave, which are the hunters, and they're there to get rid of all the results,
The final wave.
They're the final wave. They're there to just wash the board clean, because really the only thing that can take on a hunter is an agent. So if you eliminate all the agents,
so maybe the hunters are the third one.
I think they are.
They're the super force.
I think they're the super force. They've taken all of the genetic weaknesses, all of the emotions. They've taken all of that out of the agents, and they've created, I'm not going to say, you know, they didn't go through what Captain America did with the serum and stuff like that, but they've created the ultimate order taker with enhanced speed, with enhanced strength, with enhanced, I guess, ability to withstand virus, enhanced battlefield techniques. They are the enforcers. That's who they are.
All right, so let me ask you this, based on what you guys were just saying. So we kind of talked about how maybe they're either enhanced, genetically screened, or some form of super soldier, if you will. what do you think the possibility would be that they're like hand-picked shade agents that respond to, no questions asked. They're screened mentally, physically, emotionally. They're the ones that, do the bidding without the emotion response. I mean, I've kind of explained their ability to use shade tech, to move like us, to think like us, but yet they're better than us because that humane factor isn't there.
I think there's a high chance of that.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I think with both of our theories, that would dovetail in very nicely.
So kind of like a universal soldier program type thing.
Right. That had the predisposition to follow command, no questions asked.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Excellent.
Get it done. There was I did want to just interject one more little point in here. I can't remember who it was. One of my friends, when I was talking to him about the hunter theory, was like, I think that that the hunters are Rikers that have been trained up by the LMB. And I don't agree with that, but he had some sound. He had a couple sound points, and one of them is that I actually haven't checked this. So chat, tell me if any of you guys have checked this, but apparently when you kill hunters, your kill count on Rikers will go up.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Now, I don't read too much into that because I feel like, when they made the hunters, they probably had to just assign them to one of the factions, and so maybe they say, we're just going to assign them to Rikers because we don't want to assign them somewhere else. So I'm not reading too much into that, but the other point he was making is like these, the brutality, the savagery of the hunters. Don't you think that would be from like some psychopaths in Rikers or something? It's a fair point, but I'm like, I feel like I don't feel like there's a lot to support that. They're too disciplined to me to possibly be like Riker criminal types that would have just been trained over the last month or something. Because I feel it would take
considerably longer than a month or 2 months or 3 months to train these guys up to behave like this.
To use shade tech and all the there's just months and years of training that I feel like are evident. But the reason I bring it up was just because I wanted to talk a little bit more about that we find the agents with axes embedded in their chest and just all the blood and their hands chopped off and all this, and it could be. I'm not going to say that it's not. That they're just brainwashed and that they're just following orders. But the other thought I had was if they're not just brainwashed and just completely following orders, if they are still kind of like they think that they are doing the right thing, they might have been told like, hey, all second wave agents are a threat. And if they had, if the first wave had done what they were supposed to do, the quarantine zone wouldn't have failed. And if the second wave had been more effective, all of the effects here would have been mitigated much more or something. So hunters might actually be angry at agents. These sons of bitches, if they had just done their job like they were supposed to, things would be better. And they might actually kind of be using some emotion. There might be some emotion feeding into that savagery, but I don't know. We have very little data to go on, so I'm gonna say it could be one, could be the other. But that's just with the hunter theory. That was kind of what I had when my friend had talked to me about the savagery and brutality of hunters. That was kind of what I was originally thinking. Was like, maybe they're actually kind of pissed off at the agents. So I just wanted to interject that point.
Well, that's a valid point. I mean, they're obviously ruthless when it comes to their execution of us. And I don't remember if it was Buzz who pointed out earlier, as you the dark zone and survival, don't see Rikers, the LM, executed in the same fashion. So it's very isolated brutality to SA.
Yes, correct.
So from there, it's just it's interesting how they've chosen to isolate us out, and since we don't know that, that's never really going to go away. And if we ever get an answer, seem to kind of see where. But we see their tactics and we see the way they engage us and just us. But obviously they're aware that these other factions are in the dark zone. We never see them even engage the other faction. But you don't see the other factions engage them at the extractions. That never happen. So
Correct.
And on another point, to just put in here, something that I was looking for earlier this week is we don't, like we have all these incident reports, phone logs, all these random field evidences and things that we pick up throughout the game. And there was nothing from anyone else about the hunters. And at first I was like, oh, there's just nothing about the hunters. But I was like, that in itself could also be a clue. We don't see them going after anybody but agents. And, like presumably in the game, it's like almost every agent they go up against goes down, it seems like.
Nobody left to report.
Yeah, nobody left to report. So it's almost like you might even say that that's another clue. Like there aren't any other reports because they are, if anybody does see them, they go after them. And that's why there's no audio logs or reports or anything, because if anybody does see them, hunters take them out.
nobody survives.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. Their tactics are, they're ambush tactics, right? They don't ever engage us, and they seem to be very conservative tactics in that fashion too. They hit us with the EMP, they hit us with flash grenades, they hit us with smoke grenades. They try and engage from a distance, but if they can get up on us, they're not wasting bullets. So that kind of plays back into what people have talked about. Maybe they've been left behind, maybe they're angry, maybe they're brutally furious with SHD. What do you guys think about their tactics being a conservative approach because they've been left behind and left to fend for themselves by this Vexix, their shade super, whoever they may be?
Like that they're just kind of pissed off with their situation.
Mm-hmm.
You would think that the normal response to that, if you had the opportunity, if you had that much rage within you, you probably wouldn't approach a battle as conservative and as tactically acute as they do. You'd probably just roll right in, guns a-blazing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it would be that rage that would be carrying you through the battle. I don't see any of that. They clearly have the savagery, but that pure rage of being left behind by Vexix or Shade Tech or SHD or something like that doesn't seem to be there. They're very precise with their tactics. They wait till the correct moment to strike. They use their tech very well, and their tech is better than ours.
Right.
They have that one-shot sticky bomb. They have that really long-lasting EMP. They can hack our turrets immediately. They have the EMP blast they can hit with. And as far as their weaponry, yeah, it's on par with ours. You see them using PP-19s and things like that. So clearly there has to be some realism to them. If they came in with rail guns and, Han Solo's laser rifle, that wouldn't quite work for everyone. But they're very precise with the way they attack. They wait till the advantage is there tactically. If you ever noticed, if you are at a higher level than they are, like for instance, like when I extract at DZ2, I'm across the street on the rooftop. They consistently avoid poking their head up above cover because they know that I have the angle looking down on them. So clearly, I have the tactical advantage. They will blind fire up over the walls, but they constantly try to prevent exposing themselves. But if they have the elevation advantage over us, they'll push it. I don't know if you notice it. I see a lot of people at that same DZ2 or whatever, right next to Calquise. If you're down on that second level and you call and you're waiting for them there down by the stairwells, they'll push on you because you always have the advantage when you have the height. So their tactics are really well programmed, as far as, I think what Drew and the team did with them. They push when they have the advantage, they're conservative when they don't, and they use their tech very well. Okay, and then instantly when you make a mistake, when you get a little too close to them, you trigger that extra rage aggression. Well, we all know what happens. The hatchet comes out, and it's goodbye. So sad. So I really like their use of tactics. Like this is they understand like this is a cover-based shooter. You know what I mean? They do have limitations. Like I personally never really have shootouts with hunters at long range. I don't know if you guys have noticed that. It's usually at close range where they have a shotgun or a PP-19, or at medium range where maybe they're sporting some sort of,
Oh, I've definitely had some sniper battles with them.
Yeah,
I have.
BDs are brutal.
Yeah, I've never really had that with them, but they're really, really smart with their tactics. And if you want to move in with underground, where they've always got the numbers advantage, it's always squad plus one. I think they're even better in the underground as far as their tactics, because they have that really tight environment where there's a lot of chaos going on, where they thrive in that. They can hit you with multiple angles, and then as soon as you start firing at one of them, or you start centering up on one of them, two are already using that. They're using that excellent speed advantage, and they're already up on you. So their tactics are top notch, and they are the ultimate end boss in the division. I mean, I don't see anything as far as even the legendary modes or anything. None of the LMB can stand up to these. Yeah, but I really like it. It's almost like you're taking on another agent.
Right. Well, and that's what Drew said in that podcast, is they were looking for a unique challenge, and
it is.
They did a lot of balancing passes to get it right. I think he said they started with 5 med kits at one point, and they realized that was a little too excessive.
Right, and then they went to 3.
They went to 3, and they have the variation of skills they can pick from. But he was talking specifically about their tactics. Like Buzz, you like to run shield, and he was highlighting the point where most AI, when they see a shield, back up, but they wanted to make the hunters kind of stand their ground and shield.
Yeah,
and just like you said last night, was it last night or recently, you were trying the shield against the hunter survival specific. Didn't go very. And those are the kind of tactics that are fun to see in an AI, because it changes the way we play the game, and it makes us focus differently than how we're normally engaging in the game. Takes that space tanking out of the game a little bit that we're so used to. And I think they did a really, really good job with that. And I think excitement of the fact that when they were going through these balancing passes, he was maniacally laughing at some people who failed miserably in survival because of those tactics being so different. But what about the rest of this, guys? We've covered a lot of the things we wanted to touch on, but I know the hunter theory is extremely broad, and you guys have had a lot of discussions with. The Twitter discussion was fantastic. I mean, we had a lot of engagement.
Oh yeah! Oh my gosh!
A lot of people were having a good time with that.
I still have a screenshot where I went back to Twitter, and it's notifications is 99 plus. Gosh, my Twitter's exploding.
That was so much fun though, and
it was.
That's really what drove this. We realized people love the hunters as much as they hate the hunters, right? So what do you guys want to add? I mean, this is your thing. Tell us thing that we haven't touched on that we should know.
One thing that I would add. I don't disagree with you, Buzz, about them having better tech than us. I think that they do have better tech than us, and that is one of the clues that I was kind of using as impetus for the hunter theory. I was like, if they were going to set up these guys to be sort of rogue killers, they'd want them to have a little bit better tech than the standard shade agent. But ever since introducing the theory, I've been very keen to anybody who I was like, I want to know what you guys think about this, and what would be the counter argument to see if the theory really held water. And something that somebody said, that a few people said, that I felt like was justified was that, their tech doesn't seem to be that much higher than ours because we can all use EMP grenades. But yeah, their EMP effect does seem to be a bit longer, and it doesn't seem like they're using a grenade. It seems like they just kind of pop something and it goes. So yeah, it makes you wonder if they have actually all of the. If you look carefully, there's 4 different models of hunters, and they all have this little canister that says something like Z-Tech Systems along the canister, and they all have it somewhere on their outfit. And so my theory is that that's either like their version of an Isaac, or that is the thing that is like that's like the EMP pulse generator or whatever that they have. But so I'm going like, okay, so either that's the case or so I guess what I'm saying is like a couple people are like, I don't know if they have really that much higher tech than us, but yeah, I think that there's some evidence that they do, because that pulse does seem to last longer than your standard grenade, and it doesn't seem like they're doing a grenade. Like if you watch them, if you just stay back and try not to engage and just watch, and you'll see like every now and then they just hit this thing where it makes that bzzz sound, and that like sends out this disruption wave.
Right.
It's almost like they pick up like some sort of actuator and they press a button. I don't know if you've seen it. It looks like almost like a you would use for like C4. You know what I mean, like the clicker switch, and they put it up, and then you get the timer over their head, the buffering symbol, and then it goes off.
Interesting.
So it's like they have it on their uniform, they pick it up, they press the button, it takes a second to charge up or something like that, and then it actuates.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, we've got 90 minutes into this.
I'm sure there's been some questions from chat.
Like, and that's what I was just going to say. We've dove 90 minutes into this, and it's gone so smooth that, I mean, we've all kind of been fanboying over here, not even really talking. But
I absolutely have been.
I'm going to go ahead and take it over to Weezer.
Weezer's still awake?
I am still awake. Okay. I am still awake, man.
He's got a few questions from chat, and we'll let him take care of that for a few minutes.
Hey, you guys have really delved deep into the hunter, and it's been extremely entertaining for me, for someone who hasn't done that kind of extensive research into the hunter. So yeah, we have just a few questions here in chat that I want to go over, and one of them comes and says, "What is the theory on the hunters having no armor? Is there a reason that I guess that's in survival why they wouldn't have the same armor type as the agents?"
I personally, I think that that's just game mechanics. To me, they appear to be much better armored than agents. But I think that I think it was a balancing thing. I think as they were, just playing with them, I think they're like, we should make them kind of the same as the agents. But it does beg the question, Division 2. First of all, will we see hunters? I'm pretty confident that we're going to see hunters in Division 2.
I agree.
But now that we know how the armor mechanic's going to work for agents in Division 2 from the demo we saw at E3, is it going to be the same for hunters, or hunters are going to have armor? I don't know. But to just bottom, TLDR answer to that question, I think it's just a game mechanic thing, a balancing thing. They just didn't. They were just like, we don't need it.
And in actuality, they do. I mean, they are able to withstand. I mean, but if you look at us, when we drop into the DZ in survival, I don't see any armor bars for us as well, right?
Correct.
So they're basically on even terms with us. And unless you're completely geared up, you've hit all the D-Tech stops, you have all, high-end gear, you have the M44, they can take quite a bit of damage from you. If you go rolling up there with blue and purple gear and, you think you got your ACR and a couple firearms mods, I mean, they'll just sit there and just hang like, yeah, what else you got? So they certainly have it, even though they don't have an armor bar, per se, above their heads.
Right.
They can tank it with the best.
The Equimini is asking Z-Tech, what is the name of the lab again that you guys were talking about?
Actually, let me just speak to that for a second.
Okay.
So A lot of extensive research went into this cosplay, and in the game, it's actually obscured. Aquemini, it's actually obscured. So it says something Z-Tech. Wait, let me actually pull it up. I'm gonna misquote this. But I have it real quick. Hunter reference. Okay.
He's got it all in spreadsheets.
Yeah,
on
it
his
says
desktop.
something. It says something Z-Tech Systems, but the Z is clear to see. But before that, it's just too obscured. I can't make it out. But it's definitely something Z-Tech Systems. So originally I thought it might have been like DZ Tech Systems. I was kind of like, wait, what? Like Dark Zone Tech Systems? But honestly, it's just too much. It's too obscured. You can't tell what the first part says. But to answer your question, that's what it says.
Right. Excellent. We got another question from BB504. What if the cure was a serum that gave them those extra abilities, such as the Daft
extra
Punk
speed
theory, the Daft Punk theory, as it was called in chat? You know, bigger, faster, stronger.
Yeah.
Buzz, why don't you talk about that, and then I have something to chime in afterward.
As far as that, no, I don't think that the antivirals have anything to do with the augmentations that are attached to the hunters. I just simply think it's a broad spectrum virus, like an antibiotic or something like that, that is designed to combat green poison, dollar flu, whatever you want, and all of the genetic drift that it has as well. It could be even like an immune system buff or booster or something like that, if you know what I mean, to basically kick up our immune system a little bit stronger to be able to combat it and then create antibodies. The hunters and the way that they are, the way that they sit, that was all pre-Dark Zone. Their strength, their speed, all of that was, I think, and somehow some of it was created in a lab, if you know what I mean. Maybe even like a hyper steroid or something like that allows them to be able to do those things. Because I've seen that outfit that Splinter wears. I've seen that body armor and everything like that. To be able to move like that with that amount of armor and that amount of extra weight on you, and to be able to move essentially faster than us and with better agility than us, would take. They're basically like Super Saiyans. They have to have some serious strength to handle that. I think that was part of that possible. I'm not saying, like I said, it's not like Captain America where they were thrown in there with the super soldier serum and hit with gamma radiation or whatever it was. But they certainly, I think they've had something injected into them. Maybe it was just like a really strong steroid or something to really be able to allow them to handle that weight.
I'm going to say that the hunter suits with backpacks and everything, just the suits and the backpack is easily got to be over 50 pounds. With the guns and ammunition and everything, we're talking a lot of weight.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And to be able to move like us, wearing a leather jacket and jeans and skateboard knee pads and gloves, that's just pretty tremendous.
Yeah,
absolutely. Well, guys,
no, wait. There was one thing I wanted to inject real quick at the end there.
Go for it.
There was when the survival DLC teaser came out. Before it came out, there was some concept art of the hunters that was dropped. And maybe I should throw that up in the Discord so you can actually throw that up on the screen. But in one of the the concept art had like a central pane where it shows the hunter, and then there were like two little panes on the sides of that of the main pane, showing like some variations of the hunter and kind of showing like the back 3/4 view. And if you look at one of them, it kind of looks like they were maybe hinting at like some kind of exoskeleton suit to to augment the hunter. Yeah, if you look at it, it kind of looks like, and I remember this very specifically because before the DLC dropped, and I was doing my research in the Hunters, starting to put stuff together. I remember seeing that and going like, "Wait, what is this?"
Is
So,
Call of Duty creeping in here?
Oh boy. Please,
well, I
no.
mean, the exo. I mean, to be honest, the exosuit technology is less far fetched than like healing grenades and stuff
Right.
that we have in the game.
Well, and it's Tom Clancy. We're talking about near future.
Right. Right.
Mhm.
I actually was really happy when I saw how they're changing. Instead of it being a healing mechanic in Division 2, it's a sort of a re-armoring
Yes.
mechanic. I love that because I was one of the few. Like when we went to Sweden before the game dropped, I was talking to some of the other guys there. I was like, did you guys kind of get let down when you saw the 2015 trailer and like they're using these like healing grenades? Because up to that point, everything had felt so realistic and immersive. And I saw that and I was like, I know it's a game and it's fine, but it's breaking my immersion here. That's how I felt, anyways.
Well, if nobody's got anything else, I want to ask you guys to let everybody know where they can check you out again. I've been in here almost an hour and 40 minutes now. We've had people rotate in and out. Why don't you guys let them know where they can check you out and follow some of the amazing stuff you've been doing?
Go ahead, Splinter.
Okay. Best place to track the hunter is on Twitter. You'll find me at SplinterShield, and that's Splinter missing the E because the other SplinterShield is already taken. But Twitter is the best place to keep up with me. I do stream usually twice a week at SplinterShield on Twitch, and I constantly putting out cool little bits of content here and there. Also throwing things up on the Reddit. And on Reddit, I'm Chief Shields.
Chief Shields, like it. Got to work on Buzz's naming up.
Yeah, actually, I threw it over in chat. So you can actually see it. Over on Twitter at LieutenantBuzzLightBeer. YouTube, all you got to do is search LieutenantBuzzLightBeer. And then I also stream a couple times a week over on Twitch. So twitch.tv/LieutenantBuzzLightBeer.
Fantastic.
All the same.
Excellent. And as most of you guys in here know, Survival Saturday is going to be coming up. Splinter's a huge catalyst to that. But in the meantime, one of our buddies is doing a 12-hour charity stream today, Mr. Bond Diesel.
Mm-hmm.
Wrap up with this today. We're gonna go ahead and host that as he's streaming for a cause. Personally, I very much support Autism Speaks. I have a 4-year-old autistic son, so I understand the challenges that come with that.
Bless you.
And,
I also have a 9-year-old autistic son.
Wonderful. So you definitely identify with that cause. So we want to send that over to Buzz after we wrap here, or Bond after we wrap here. I'm sorry. But in the meantime, Weezer, why don't you let everybody know where they can find and follow you, and thank you for all your help today.
Dude, it has been amazing to listen to you guys talk about the hunter. Some super entertaining conversation. That's what I envisioned when I had this idea, is to bring people of the community together, people like Buzz, people like Splinter, that really have a lot of knowledge about these things, and a place where we can just get together, promote positive gaming community, talk about these things, and it's really, really fun to see it coming together. I'm working on some other shows that are going to be coming in the future, and those announcements. I'm working on one that's centered around the lure, the story, and the location of the original Division, and us moving to Washington, D.C. And I've reached out, and so far we've got some commitments. We've got our good buddy Deep Fried Dave. All of you guys know Dave. We're going to set that up to try to get him and a few of the wonderful people over at Bombshell Jackets. Tinks and Dave have done a ton of lure stuff within the Division. We're going to get her on as well, and I'm sure if we ask him nicely enough, he's here in chat, we can probably get Rimp and C to jump on there as well and keep us entertained as well. So that would be super awesome. If you all in chat or listening on YouTube have any other suggestions of people you would like to hear in that one, just shoot it over to Sherpa Co Gaming on Twitter, or on my Twitter at GamewithWeezer. I'm also working on one that will probably be coming out later this year when we get some more information on PvP and the DZ, both how it's related to the original Division and what we think or might know by then about the Division 2. And so far, I've got some good people lined up for that as well. We've got Denty, Like Butter, Eric's and
Nice.
269 from Eric's Gaming have committed to join us, and so far we got Marco Style. I'm still reaching out to Wids. I know a lot of people want Wids to be on there, so that should be an
Nice.
awesome roundtable as well. So far,
Oh, yeah.
all those people are in, and it's just a fun thing. I think everybody enjoys doing it. And as we have some more of these roundtable discussions, you all in chat, we'll be having roundtables with you all as well, where we can pull you into the Discord. You can express your opinions, your thoughts, concerns, anything like that, and just drive positive conversation in games. That's what this is all about. So I appreciate everyone joining us. Thank you to everybody that retweeted out the show. That can't go without saying. Everybody was so supportive all week. We had the Division game tweeted out, all of you wonderful people in chat, so many people showing us a lot of love, and what Major Pain and Sapper are doing over at Sherpa Co Gaming. So I don't want to keep you guys any longer. We're going to be doing some Survival Saturday. Splinter, are you going to be streaming? Are you going to be streaming?
Yes, sir.
The Hunter's going to be streaming. So look for that. I'm going to take a little break, and I'm going to set up, and I'm going to be streaming it as well. What about you, Buzz? Are you taking a break? Are you going to be streaming? No? Yeah.
I am done for the weekend.
Okay. All right. Okay. So me and
You got it all.
me and Splinter are on the case. Don't worry. If you want to see great survival gameplay, let me just go ahead. I'm sure you already know. A little suggestion. Go watch Splinter Cell. If you want to see me die in epic fashion, then you know where you can find me.
Before you leave the first safe house.
Yes, and that happened multiple times. But thank you, everyone that stopped by, and I'm going to send it over to our good buddy Bond. Drop in, tell him hello. If you got a few bucks, donate. It's a great cause, and thank you, everyone who joined us today. Have a good Saturday, everyone.
Adios.
Peace.
Watch your six. All right, I think that went well.